Good evening.
Welcome back. It's been about 2 weeks.
I just had to go out of town with my family.
Yeah. When you run a podcast, you don't get a family, Brittany.
I know, right? This is my family.
The show is everything.
The listeners are my family. Cleet, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a PBR.
You would.
I'm feeling more hipstery as I drink it. My pinky's going up in the air.
I was gonna say, what's your pinky doing? I'm drinking Colossal Clod. It's an Imperial India Pale Ale from Rogue Brewing Co. It's got a cool sea monster on it. It's blurry as shit, but it's good.
Yeah, I wish I could have saw it. I don't know why you're blurring your background, Britton. What are you hiding back there?
Just a bunch of cool shit you wouldn't understand.
If your eyes laid on the background of my room, your mind wouldn't be able to comprehend it. You'd go mad.
Exactly. See the shelf behind
Jesus.
me? It's all the decapitated victims I have.
All right,
it's like
cool. So
it's like The Walking Dead.
What are we doing today? I heard there's a new feature in Buzzsprout. Is that right?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. So if you follow us on Buzzsprout, that's like our main podcast distribution. It sends it everywhere. But we have a link on Buzzsprout, and there's a new feature. If you click on an episode, there's a button that says "Send us a text message." It's not actually a text. It's more like a chat system, but it comes directly to Cleet and I. And you can chat with us real time, and we'll respond to anything you have. So just another way of getting in touch with us. Again, you can chat on YouTube. You've got our email address, entertheabysspod@gmail.com, and now a text message feature. So if you want to get in touch with us, just chat with us. Please do. It's on Buzzsprout.
We have been getting some fan mail on Spotify, but it's not the easiest user-friendly thing to find the actual chats.
It is.
But I did go and read a couple because we got some, and you won't believe how many people keep bringing up the walk out the walk out balcony.
You struggled
part.
again.
People still do it. I think it's kind of funny. I just need to embrace it. I cannot say those two words. I don't know why.
Well,
it was just funny. I was reading it. Yeah, and someone was just like, don't be listening to all those haters. P.S. Walk out balcony. And I'm like, son of a bitch. But
that was funny.
Anyways, if you guys want to be read on the show, one recommendation I would have for you is email us on entertheabysspod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Should we read the most recent fan mail? I can pull it up.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Pull it up real quick. Yeah. But like Cleet said, the Spotify thing is great if that's the way you want to do it, because I think it works great with the app. But like Cleet said, it doesn't really tell us what episode you commented on, so we kind of have to dig. So if we miss you, I apologize. Again, it's not the most user-friendly. entertheabysspod@gmail.com, and maybe this new text feature is probably the best way to get in touch with Cleet and I, and we will read anything, almost anything, unless, I don't know, someone out there might send us some stuff that we legally can't read. I don't know who you are.
Or they might try to tickle you through a text. Anyways, going to fan mail, we got one recently from Damien. He says, "Hi, I'm Damien, and I'm a big fan of your podcast, and I have a few paranormal stories I would like to tell you about.
Ooh.
All of these happened to me directly. My first one is, I woke up late at night, probably 3 a.m, when I had a feeling something was watching me. When I put my phone down, I saw a black shadow with yellow eyes staring at me in the hallway. I didn't sleep that night."
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to him? Did he just disappear? I need more context. Wait, the second one was, I was chilling in my room watching Adult Swim. I remember that show.
The good old days of Adult Swim.
Yeah.
Robot Chicken
I fell
was
asleep.
the best, man.
And I fell asleep watching It.Tye. I don't think I've heard of that.
Neither have I.
Anyways, next thing I know, I was in a state of sleep paralysis. I had the sudden urge to look up over my head and saw a woman's hand gripping my headboard. That's creepy. I was freaking out, and then I saw the top of her head. She had long, black, wet hair.
Yikes.
Then I woke up fully and just stared at those stairs till the sun came up. The last story was possible alien spacecraft.
Ooh.
Was coming back from Vermont when me and my mother, which also saw it, looked up and saw a very bright light over the highway, and the next thing I can remember, we were already back home. That had to be at least an hour and 30 minutes gone from my memory. Seems like this guy's just seen it all, hasn't he? Anyways, he says, "Thank you for reading my stories. I love listening to you guys when I work. I have a few more stories, but I didn't want to make this one long. If you want them, just say so, and I'll send them in. Oh, also, when something is called terrible, you don't buy it. P.S. Walk out balcony. And then he writes, Psst, it's not for science, it's for pleasure. Oh, yeah. I remember. I did. Oh, yeah. He wanted to make sure you knew that. This is not for science.
He went out of his way. He got nothing scientific out of this. It was straight pleasure.
Oh, man. That's so funny.
Thank you for the support of the show and sending that in. I love the double roast on Cleat. One for picking a terrible beer and then the walkout balcony. But then, you redeemed yourself for...
That's my best line of the show,
that was
I think.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and if you have more stories, definitely send them our way. We'll see about getting them read.
Yeah, don't worry about length. We'll make it happen. Size matters, buddy.
Let's talk about what we're reading tonight.
So we're going to jump into a Reddit thread about people who live in small, quiet towns and the scariest thing that's happened to them there.
A lot of weird things happen in small towns.
Yeah. So I'll start with the first one because I kind of read it already and I got a little chuckle out of it. I don't know. It's not funny, but to me, it was a little funny. But this comes from Paleosaurus Rex. A while ago, circa 2004 maybe, there was a car accident and someone's head flew out of the window. When the cops got there, they were confused because everyone had their head attached. Turns out one of the guys in the wreck, pretty sure he was killed during the wreck, decapitated his girlfriend, threw her body into the canal, and took her head with him for God knows what reason. Turns out he didn't die in the wreck. Also, the wreck was on purpose. He was trying to unalive himself.
Oh my God.
That's how we're starting, ladies and gentlemen. And the first comment, which is exactly my thought, was, I thought the worst part was the beginning, but it just kept escalating. It just kept going and going and going.
This one is from Lexosaurus Rex, which is odd.
That's weird.
Grew up in a small town of 75 people. We had a guy break into a farmhouse, tied up the wife, and she recognized him despite his mask, so she asked why he was doing this. He got scared and took off. Locals in the area went into lockdown. The police found him hiding in his house. When they searched his house, they found loads of stolen items. Evidently, he was breaking into local houses and stealing women's and girls' clothing. They set up a table at the community center and asked people to come check if they recognized anything. He had one of my sister's swimsuits and a couple of pairs of my underwear, and I was about 12. Fucking creep.
Wow.
That's weird, man.
Small towns.
I don't know about that.
Small towns. All right, this comes from Deleted. We had a girl die during a class in school. Like, just drop dead. She had no previous problems that anyone knew of, so it was a total surprise. The whole school was kind of quiet and muted for the rest of the year. That's wild. I wonder if it, the first comment, was it a brain aneurysm or something? Like, that shit's creepy, man. The fact that, snap of your fingers, you could just die from a brain aneurysm.
If I knew that was my destiny, the day before, I'd be like, I can't sleep. Every time I sleep, I see a man with claws and he's going to kill me. And then, you start the Freddy thing.
Freddy's coming for you. Yeah, man.
All right, this one is from Beanie Back. My room faces the street, and I had a window opened because it was super hot that night. Around 2 a.m., I was laying in bed when I briefly heard what sounded like loud breathing coming from outside. And then suddenly, my dog threw herself against the window, barking and growling like crazy. I grabbed the bat that I keep under my bed, woke up my dad, and we checked outside. All we found was a set of shoe prints in the dirt in front of my window. So we just went back inside and locked everything. Now that window hasn't been unlocked in 2 years, has a couple of large rose bushes in front of it, and my family spoils my dog even more than we did before.
Okay, this comes from Deleted. About 7 years ago, we had a nutcase abduct a 13-year-old girl, kill her family, chop them up, put them in trash bags, and hid them in a tree 30 feet up. She was found when the police tracked him down and raided his house a few days later. I was staying with my aunt, and that morning we went out to get donuts and got caught nearly in the middle of it. I was 14-ish at the time, and she lived less than a block away. Good Lord, just stuffed him up in a tree? It's a good hiding place.
Man, small towns can be pretty weird.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
This one is from Stitcher. Lived in a very small town all my life until last year. Every once in a while, body parts would wash up on the shore of a local elderly woman who were murdered. Okay, so it's parts of this old person. Interesting. No one ever found the killers. Lots of drunk drivers. And I almost got hit and kidnapped by one when I was 18. Was running and screaming at them to leave me alone, for someone to help me out, etc. Everyone ignored us. Lol.
Okay.
People didn't like her in that town. There she is, crying wolf. Anyways,
LOL.
she says, "Oh, also, my mom had a stalker who watched over her while she slept and eventually started watching over me as a child." But who's letting him in?
Yeah.
Anyways, one birthday in particular, I was having a party with my friends. I was probably about 8, and my mom suddenly ran out the door. Apparently, he was standing at the window watching me and my friends. So she just books it without the kids?
Small towns, man. I don't even know. What is
Everyone run for your life! She like pushes a kid down on her way out. Kid, take her!
You just have to outrun the slowest person, man. That's the rule.
Eventually, she was able to get a restraining order against him, and he moved to the house right at the edge of the restraining order.
He's like, this is legally the closest that I can possibly be to you.
Says 200 feet. It starts at 201.
Perfect.
Anyways, Witch was still in town. Tried to do more to prevent being around him, but she finally gave up when she kept being told he was technically abiding by the restraining order, and we lived in fear for a while until we both eventually moved on. Moved. My dad still lives there, though. Wow. Well, broken family.
This comes from Get Lost, you psycho. I don't live there anymore, but I grew up in a tiny rural little place. Everyone had a lot of land, so houses were pretty far apart. When I was a teenager, someone murdered a man, cut his body up, and drove it out to that tiny rural town and dumped the pieces down a hillside. What the fuck? He's like watching them roll down the hill like, ha ha, ha ha. The guy who did it wasn't from the area because if he had been, he would have realized that he'd picked the absolute worst place to dump a body. Lots of hunters lived out that way, and since it was the country, they let their dogs roam free. Hey, lots of dog treats. Didn't take more than a few hours for someone's beagle to drag home part of an arm. They managed to find most of the body over the next couple of days. They never did find all of it, but assumed that other animals had gotten the other bits. The guy got caught and went to prison for it. It was surreal, though, seeing all the cops and news crews out there. The body got dumped about 2 miles away from my house. Jesus Christ.
What is all this cubed meat on this hill?
Seriously. And ever since then, they called it Body Part Hill.
This one is from Space Turtle 1138.
Hell yeah.
When my friends and I were around 12 or 13, there's this bookstore downtown that we used to visit. My friend's dad worked at the restaurant a few blocks away, so we would wander around downtown while he was working. We went into this bookstore one day, and the owner started chatting with us. Very friendly. But he said some kind of weird things. Like, he told us he had a fountain behind the store if we wanted to go swimming with him. Then he asked if we were hungry and told us he had some SpaghettiOs in the back.
Oh, Jesus. I got some SpaghettiOs in the trunk if you want it. They're mighty
Just
cold.
Get in the back of my store now. Anyways, they say if we wanted to come eat some. It kind of weirded us out, so we left. But since we were so young, we didn't really think much of it other than it was weird. Then a few months later, it was on the news that he RA'd a young girl in his store. It's terrifying to think that we ran around and hung out on that same street, or even how things could have gone differently if one of us had gone into the store alone.
This comes from Ol' Murky Turkey. This didn't happen to me, but the whole story is just unnerving from beginning to end, so the details are seared into my memory. In a fairly small town in Maine, a dog groomer answers a knock at her door one morning. A strange man stands there, smelling of gasoline and pig manure, and asking for help with a pregnant dog in distress.
Never trust a man with a pig farm.
That's true. You get rid of a lot of bodies.
They'll eat human bones.
They eat everything, dude. They leave nothing behind. The pregnant dog has a pup stuck in the birth canal. The man, seemingly in an attempt to extricate the pup, has pulled the pup's head off. I'm not sure exactly when in the timeline, but the dog groomer sensed something off about this man and has her young daughter hide in a dog kennel. Sure enough, the man starts attacking the dog groomer, and she is only able to fend him off with a sliver of glass from a picture that was smashed in the struggle. At the time I read this story, the guy hasn't been caught. The specificity of the man's smell, the kid hiding in a dog kennel, and the horrible detail about the poor puppy, yikes. Jesus Christ, man, that's intense.
You don't hurt dogs or people, okay?
Dogs are people.
Don't do that.
Everything else, all fair game. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, this one is from Steven885. I live in a small town. One of those that everyone knows everyone kind of towns. One night, my dad, his girlfriend, and 2 kids were over from out of state. In total, there were about 8 or 9 of us there. About 9 o'clock at night, there was a knock at the door. My brother-in-law goes to answer it, and there is a man there, out of breath and speaking incoherently. We gathered that he was asking to borrow one of our cars. I need you to drive your car. Sure, here's my keys. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Next thing I knew, my brother-in-law had pulled his pistol from the cabinet next to the door. Now I'll take a moment to say that the previous 30 minutes or so, we had all been showing my dad our weapons. There were a range of pistols, rifles, and shotguns. Pretty much the worst time for someone to pull this. Even though there was no ammo except for the pistol my brother-in-law had, having 3 or 4 rifles aimed at you would be scary as shit.
Yeah, you think?
Anyways, this dude is persistent. We gather that some amount of drugs was in his system. He ends up putting his foot in the door, preventing it from being closed. After some crazy amounts of calmness from my brother-in-law, the dude ends up leaving. We keep hearing noises outside. Apparently he kept checking our cars and even tried to start one of our 4-wheelers, which was broken at the time. We called the cops and let them know what happened. Since we live in a small town, our city's police jurisdiction doesn't extend all the way out to where we live, and County PD responded. Luckily, they had been looking for this guy for a bit, so they were close by. It was crazy seeing 6 or 7 cop cars in our front lawn with search dogs and the lot. They leave a cop in the front as the rest go out searching. An hour or so later, he leaves, and we weren't sure exactly why. But we ended up calling the non-emergency number to figure out what's going on, because we were all still scared shitless. They found the dude about a mile or so into the forest behind our house. To add to it all, they set the house alarm that night, which is supposed to be more for when you're out of town, as there are internal motion sensors. So about 2:30 in the morning, the alarm ends up going off, loud as shit. The cat set the hallway sensor, and that was the end of it, thankfully.
Fucking cat.
That scared the shit out of me, just like alarms going off, waking you up.
There's nothing scarier than being dead asleep and having an alarm go off. This is from Mags Webbs. My hometown is about 800 in population now. It's right on the Ohio River, and everyone knows everyone. We have a place there that people started calling Witch's Castle. I think in like the early 80s before I was born. It's actually just what's left of a house that burnt down, but kids made it into a scary place to go. But a group of high school girls talked a 12-year-old, who they were jealous of, into going there to start torturing her and then throw her in the trunk, driving around to eat with her in the trunk, stopping at the mall for a bit, and eventually burning her alive. Her name was Shanda Scherer. It was national news, and there are books about it. Some of the girls were recently released from prison, I think. I believe it happened in '92, but I was a baby. When I would tell anyone I was from Utica, Indiana, they would immediately ask me questions about it. Super sad story. Jesus Christ, man.
That's fucked. All right, this one is from John Walker's Beard.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be a guaranteed good story, people.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
I grew up in a small town in eastern Oregon. We used to throw bonfire parties. A few of us would beg an older cousin or sibling to buy a few cases of beer, and we'd go way out in the foothills area outside of town, light a bonfire, drink beer, smoke weed, fight, and make out.
All the important things in life.
We're out in a secluded area one night, further than usual, in some clearing someone found, when we hear a gunshot, then another from a different location, then another. Then some creepy inbred-looking motherfucker comes storming out telling us to get the fuck off his property. Then another gunshot from somewhere. Everyone screams and bolts.
That's quite the insult to say, you inbred-looking motherfucker. Like, no one ever wants to hear that.
We are all hauling ass down the mountain when we come around a corner, and there on the side of the road, up the hill a bit, is this other creepy redneck-looking dude with face camo holding a rifle staring at us. So apparently I don't think this person likes country people.
It does.
I get that vibe.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like they do at all.
Home's back where you came.
Okay, this comes from Pylon A3. When I was 14 to 16, I started working at a convenience store / gas station. Not long after I started, this man who was a garbage man would come in almost every single day. He would chit-chat every time and always buy the same thing. He was in his 30s, and he would always say, "Hey, trouble," when he walked in. By the time I was 15 to 16, he was still coming in every day and talking, but then the weird, awkward comments started happening. Didn't really think too much of it, because it happens sometimes, but then he started asking me to dinners and stuff, which I respectfully declined, until he started asking every time he came in. I started to get a bit short with him, hoping that he would just go somewhere else. Eventually, when I went into one shift, my bosses, who were from India, pulled me aside and asked me to tell my friends to stop calling and asking when my shifts were.
Where'd she get off? Where'd she live?
I immediately got uncomfortable, and I assured them that everyone who I'm close with wouldn't call and ask those sort of things. Then they said it sounded like a middle-aged man on the phone, and sure enough, he admitted that it was him. I was livid and asked my bosses to not give that info to anybody who calls. Forward a few months, he ended up following me home, found out where I lived. One night, someone broke into my car and stole my book bag. Somehow, he found out and delivered the bag to my house directly, tried to make his way in. I thanked him for the bag and pretended that I was on my way out. My parents weren't home from work yet. Later, I realized he's the one who took the book bag. Well, I kind of figured that.
Oh my God.
He's like,
sounds like a conspiracy to me.
It's like, someone stole this book bag. I don't know who, but here it is. It's like, how'd you fucking find him? And how did you know?
It's like, was it you? Okay, conspiracy theorist.
Wow.
Come on. Go take the tinfoil off your hat and thank me.
It was the aliens. Pretty damn sure. Spacecraft flew away from your car.
It's like, why is your hands bleeding? Someone like punched through my window. It's just, I don't know.
There's glass in your bag, I promise. To sum up, I eventually quit the job and started working in another town about half an hour away. Didn't see him for 2 years. Pretty sure a family friend that knew him had a word with him. Then he walked into the store I was working at, changed his looks completely to the point that I had no idea that it was him. I only realized it was him when he said, "Hey, trouble." Needless to say, I went to the back and let one of the other girls help him. Haven't seen him since. Wow.
Creepy. All right. This one is from Styx Run. Small town, low literacy, circa 1990, when countrywide satanic panic was high. Half this town can't read, and the other half is on meth. Somehow, a family was accused of being Satanists, witches, whatever. True facts. They had put gray shingles on their house. The wife lost a pregnancy. The dad was a hippie type with long hair. They didn't take their toddler to church. They had a wheelchair-bound mentally disabled relative who they occasionally cared for. The rest of the rumors seemed to spring out of nowhere and only took a month to basically take over the town. They were accused of their house hiding the entrance to a massive underground arena where human sacrifices were made. They were accused of cannibalism, rape, and torture.
Good Lord.
I was in kindergarten, and teachers were reading from these anti-Satan booklets in school.
In kindergarten? What are you talking about?
Don't trust Satan. My parents were keyed in to what was going on when they were sent books to educate themselves. My parents didn't buy into it, but they were the minority. Churches held meetings where gruesome descriptions of what might be happening were described and experts were brought in. One sold pricey holy water, said to ward off witches. Kids talked about their dads melting down silver jewelry to tip bullets. I guess in case they were werewolves? I don't know. A ton of the rumors that circulated seemed borrowed from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's just lazy.
Yeah.
Rooms filled with body parts and dead family members. Furniture made from corpses.
What the fuck is happening here?
Soon, a rumor started that the family planned to kidnap a child for sacrifice. Their house was staked out, surrounded by hunters in tree stands and armed volunteers in hunter's camo. They canceled field trips and recess. Our school was surrounded too by armed men to the teeth and prepared to shoot at shadows. Oh my God. Some weren't even local. It spread to different towns. They came from nearby towns to join in taking out the witches. They weren't allowed on school property with their rifles, so they patrolled the perimeter. Finally, one interrogated a parent coming up to pick up a kid by pointing a loaded rifle at his face, and the police stepped in.
Jesus Christ,
Then it ramped.
dude.
This small town is crazy. Then it ramped up, and kids were saying their parents were going to get the witches. Oh, these people are going to die.
My dad's going to get the witches if you don't shut up, Johnny.
My big brother, he's going to kill them. The street outside the house was closed off by the police. Angry locals were arrested trying to get past the barrier. My family was involved in helping to get the accused out of town. A secret to this day, the accused family left with whatever they could carry, leaving everything else behind. There were fizzling outrage when they disappeared, but people were convinced that they had instead disappeared into the caves supposedly under the house. People broke in, searched, and trashed the place. Then the house burnt to the ground. No caves. It was over as fast as it happened, and only much later I found out the details from my family. In high school, I had friends whose family still had bottled holy water. None of them doubted they had averted a satanic takeover.
What the fuck?
So,
Who doesn't have
just-
bottled holy water, though? Come on, man.
My God.
It's on my
man.
nightstand all hours of the night.
They almost murdered a family.
That's true. That's true. All right, this is from Miss a Ship. When I was 18, I lived in this shitty apartment building, one of only 2 in the entire town. I lived with a few of my high school friends, and we basically just got drunk and played video games when we weren't at work. All hours of the night. Man, I remember my early adult years.
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
One night, a guy knocks on our door looking for his friend. He hadn't seen her in a week, and she lived in one of the other 20 apartments in the building. We said that we hadn't seen her, and we wished him luck tracking her down. I
Looking for my friend, Methany.
suppose it would help to know that this was a super small town. Everybody knew everyone. We forgot about the guy until on my lunch the next day. I walked home only to find every cop in our town in the parking lot. The missing girl from the night before had apparently been murdered a week prior, and the killer had been holding his own wife and kids hostage for days because they had found out. When the guy's wife got out of her house, she called the cops, and they found the woman's body shortly after. She had been dead in the apartment for a week, and everyone in our town lost their minds. I suppose to people in cities or larger towns that this isn't out of place, but in a town that small, it was crazy. We knew the victim and her killer and their families. I think the only other murder in or near the town had been a guy shooting his girlfriend in a jealous rage maybe 20 years earlier. Damn.
Crazy. All right, this one is from Deleted. Urban suburban transplant who moved to a very rural town in 2012. In the course of almost 5 years, there have been numerous CPS inquiries at the school I teach at, which seemed abnormal having started my career in a suburban area. The most rattling instances were as follows. 1. 2 years ago, 2 elementary students at a neighboring district were found locked in dog cages by their parents after a truancy investigation. 2. This year, a student I had taught shot his brother in his sleep, then dragged his brother's body into a shed before stealing his brother's car and going on a joyride. He later returned home to await his mother's arrival and, without a hint of remorse or emotion, relayed what he had done to his mother. 3. This could have very well be small-town rumors, but apparently My neighbors across the road have been suspected of running meth via their cattle.
Oh, knew it. Snap, I knew it. They put the meth in the cow's butthole.
My guess would be smuggling by inserting bags in their anuses if it was the case. That's what he says.
I knew it.
They do only transport their cattle in the dead of night, but that may be a matter of courtesy by not congesting the road with unnecessary traffic. Needless to say, I'm ready to get back to civilization.
So everyone in that town who has burgers gets immediately fucked up. I feel like I've just done an ounce of meth, man. I don't know.
I feel great. Too great.
I can smell colors. I kind of want to stab someone in the stomach.
You ever want to rip off your face?
All the time, man. This is from Inferius X. Lived in a small mountain town for a year or so. Population roughly 7,400 now, was probably closer to 5,000 when I lived there. The town had a tiny AM radio station of which I was a DJ. There were 5 employees total. Me, my boss, another DJ, and 2 salespeople. That was it. So it wasn't uncommon to be working sometimes in the middle of the day and be the only person in the station. Well, one such day, right in the middle of the week, I'm recording some advertisements when these 2 dudes walk in, both wearing long black trench coats. It was the middle of summer. They're aliens for sure. I stop what I'm doing and I come out to greet them, see what they need. Only one of them speaks to me. The other guy spent the entire time carefully looking at all the stuff we had on the walls like he was analyzing everything. The dude who spoke to me asked me a lot of random questions about the station and myself. How long has the station been here? How long have you been in radio? Etc. Nothing about what he said or any of his questions was that weird, but the way that he was asking them in his tone and staring at me with kind of a vacant, glassy-eyed gaze was firing off all sorts of something ain't right feeling in my gut.
There was something different, something that wasn't quite human, as it were.
Okay, H.P. Lovecraft. I start to walk to another part of the main office area and start to sort through papers like I'm getting ready to get back to work or something. When I walk behind the main desk, I can see out of the window into the parking lot. I look out the window and I can see their car. Standing outside of their car are 2 more motherfuckers in black trench coats. Both of them are just standing there, staring at the entrance to the radio station. Now I'm internally freaking the fuck out. I start to get a bit curt with the guy speaking to me, and I let them know that if they don't need anything else, that I really need to be getting back to work. The guy creepily says something like, "Of course, we don't mean to be bothering you," while still giving me that pod person stare. They finally walk out the door, but didn't leave right away. One of them started smoking a cigarette, and they continued to stay outside, all talking and gesturing towards the building. They ended up getting in their car and driving away a few minutes after that. I tell my manager when he gets back like 15 minutes later. We never figured out exactly who they were, but he had a guess. Apparently this town had a militant branch of Jehovah's Witnesses that operated more like a cult than your usual JW weirdness. Thing is, in such a small town you'd think I'd have seen one of those guys at some point later. I never saw any of the 4 of them in my remaining time there. That's some dedicated Jehovah's Witnesses, man.
Better than the mathematists. All right, this one is from Skippy Blue Stockings.
Excuse me?
In 2007, yeah, you heard me. That's what I fucking said.
I haven't heard that nickname since high school.
Seems like a nickname for you.
Yep.
All right. In 2007, we lived in a small town in Kentucky near Fort Campbell. My now ex had just deployed to Iraq, and the kids and I, who had been moved there 7 months prior, were settling into the school year. We heard through parents of their classmates who had worked in the emergency room at a local hospital that a woman had been brought in who had been RA'd and stabbed in the neck with a butter knife in a remote area about 12 miles from where we lived, and her 5-year-old. And her 5-year-old? I'm not sure if they both were victims, but anyways, her 14-year-old and her 17-year-old had been murdered when they came home from school that day. Okay, so she was RA'd and her whole family was murdered. Damn. The guy had slashed their throats since they had come across him attacking their mother. But he was stupid as he had committed these crimes using his work truck and in his work uniform, which was DirecTV technician/installer. So catching him wasn't difficult. The woman survived, And they actually did a TV show on her. That's just so sad, man. Like, her whole family got killed. That's why I sighed. Anyways.
Yeah.
So they did a show on her on the ID channel. The really creepy part about this was that the guy actually lived in the town that I lived in, and he lived less than a mile from my house. We passed his house every single day on our way home from school, and the kicker was he was the DirecTV installer who had installed my system. The guy had been inside my house not 7 months earlier. That's fucked, man. I feel so bad. Like, I don't like that story.
It's a rough one.
No.
This comes from Digital Rion. A couple years ago, my dad had a scanner in the kitchen. When I was up one night, I was getting a drink, and I just so happened to listen to the scanner. I could hear the police going off about something. It piqued my interest, so I stood there for a bit listening to the police, apparently chasing something around a community. The way they described it was that it had long hair, crawling on arms, had no legs.
What the
What
fuck?
the
A snake? Was it a snake? A hairy snake?
Long hair, crawling. Snake doesn't have arms.
A snake with arms, man.
Okay, let's go with that theory. And that it was supposedly fucking with them. The police were legit chasing something not human. All right, let's see where this goes. This is ridiculous. A bit after that, it died down, and I asked my cousin, who was at the station that night, and he said that the guys who came back after chasing it were pale and shocked. Ironically, like they saw a ghost. They gave me a much better story, that they answered to a call in a community because someone was jumping from roof to roof. So they answered the call and went to check. When they checked out the house that it was reported at, the thing had been crawling in the backyard, and they said that when they looked at it, they immediately ran back to their cruiser and called backup. They proceeded to chase it with 5 cruisers on its ass. They chased it for 2 hours, and it led them to a forest area, and that's when they stopped because by then they had realized that it was a spirit luring them into where it ever came from.
Yeah, sure.
I honestly have...
That's what the cops knew.
Yeah. I honestly have so many more stories to tell that it goes on in my town, and it's not the first time something like that has been around the communities. I don't know. I'm going to go with a snake. It's a lot more believable than that shit.
A snake with arms. That was hairy. All right, this one is from Brunette Moment. I grew up on a mountain in a log home in the middle of the woods. My parents and brother had bedrooms upstairs, and my bedroom was on the first floor. One Christmas Eve, when I was about 16, my younger brother and I stayed up playing Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit in front of the crackling fire. But we were finally ready to go to sleep around midnight. Every year, on Christmas Eve, he would sleep on a cot in my room so that it would be easier to wake me up at the ungodly hour the next morning to rummage through our stockings. I had just turned out the light and nestled into my blankets. A moment of peace passed, perhaps 2. And then came a knock on my bedroom window. My eyes flew open. My brother sat up, his sleeping bag pulled up around his head, and stared at me like a giant caterpillar. Another knock. We held our breath. Slowly, he reached a trembling hand toward the curtain, pinched the bottom of the corner in his chubby little fingers, and flicked it back. I didn't see anything, he hissed, as the curtain fluttered back into place. We sat frozen, our thoughts flying. Maybe it was Dad, he ventured. Yes, of course. How silly we were. This was but a Merry Christmas prank.
It's nothing but a Merry Christmas prank.
We tiptoed out of my room and crept up to our parents' door, flinching at every creak from the wooden steps. I turned back to see that my brother had grabbed the fire poker. We eased the door open, and there they lay, both of our parents, soundly asleep. I pulled the door softly shut, and we made our way back downstairs. I stood in front of the fire, rubbing my arms, trying to get warm. Perhaps we had only imagined it. Suddenly, my brother gasped. I saw a face in the window. My thawing blood returned to ice. Gathering courage from I know not where, my brother strode to the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The seconds ticked by, frosty air from the open door licking my bare feet. It seemed ages before he returned. There's no one out there, he breathed. We stood, huddled in front of the fire for a few more minutes before deciding there was nothing else to be done about it, and we went to sleep. My best friend lived about a quarter of a mile up the mountain from me. One Christmas Eve, she decided to go for a midnight stroll. The moon was bright as she tromped down the dirt road. And then, a stroke of luck. Up on the hill, she saw a light in my bedroom window. Oh, what fun. She could come say hello. I would be so happy to see her. She trudged up through the snow, making her way to my window. Sounds like this is the story, right? Mm-hmm. Alas, now the light had gone out. No worry, I couldn't be asleep yet.
Who the fuck says alas?
There's a lot of interesting words in this. I mean, like, look, trudged.
On the scale of like how usual Reddit threads go, this is pretty well documented.
He was using a thesaurus, or she. She reached up and gave a sharp rap upon the pane. She paused. No answer. She reached up and knocked again. As she withdrew her hand the second time, a thought struck her. This might not have been the best idea. Perhaps I would not be delighted, but frightened. Oh, what remorse! She pictured me now shaking in terror, running to wake my father, who would be sure to release the dogs on her. The dogs! We have a very large guard dogs. Friendly enough to anyone inside the house, but Lord bless any who trespassed. She threw herself under a bush, certain she would hear the barking already. This measly cover could not hide her. She had let me know it was only she who had come knocking on my window. This seems, I don't know about this. I had a curtain, so she moved into the living room window, pulling herself up by the sill. She managed to see, by the glow of the fire, my brother, and what looked like my mother silhouetted against the firelight. Oh no, I'd gone upstairs and awakened everyone. My father was not in sight. He would surely release the hounds at any moment. He would come outside, as well, gun loaded, ready to shoot her on sight. With that thought in mind, she took off, not down the moonlit front hill on which she would be an easy target, but straight into the dark woods. Fast as she could, through the knee-deep snow, she clambered over fallen trees, frozen branches clawing at her face. Disoriented in the darkness, she tripped and fell into a frozen creek. Now soaking wet through the darkness, she ran and ran, finally reaching home, where she sat all night shivering, certain she had ruined our Christmas. All right, what a story.
Damn.
Pretty good.
All right, well, this last one comes from Grainman23. I was in my early 20s and I lived by myself in a small house in a town of about 1,000 people. One Friday night, roughly 10 or 11 p.m., I was lying in bed watching TV when suddenly the power goes out. Roughly 5 seconds later, there's a massive explosion, cracking windows, knocking stuff off of shelves. It was insanely loud. I thought someone was trying to mess with me, threw a stick of dynamite outside my bedroom window. I jumped up and grabbed a coat and ran out the back door, hoping to catch the asshole that just did that. When I walked around the front of the house, I saw a guy that I had never seen before, standing in the middle of the street, staring toward the west, looking up in the sky. I remember yelling something at him like, "What was that?" or "What are you doing?" And he didn't respond. He just stood there, didn't even look at me. I was still shaken by the explosion and now frustrated that this guy isn't answering me, so I start to walk out into the road when I notice what he's looking at. I saw a mushroom cloud of fire that extended miles into the sky. It looked like something you see on TV, and I could feel the heat from it. I look back at the guy to ask him what happened, and he's running down the street in the opposite direction. There was a chemical plant a few miles out of town that had blown up. The first thing I did was run back into the house to put on some pants. When I came back out, you could smell the chemicals in the air, so I knew that I needed to get as far away as possible. I hopped in the truck and I started trying to find all my family to get them out of there. Everyone was on the same page and we all evacuated within minutes. The town had a mandatory evacuation for I think a day or two. The explosion ended up killing 6 people that worked in the plant.
Pretty scary, man. Explosive.
All right, well, that is going to wrap us up on a very happy note. Thank you again for joining us here at The Abyss, and thank you to our paid supporters of the show, Modelo Time, Bill Cleaton, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Devin, Lara, Conklin family, and Lou. Your continued support of the show is definitely helpful. And if you want to support the show yourself, click the link in the description below. There's several tiers you can help, and anything you contribute definitely helps out. And as we talked about earlier, if you want to get in contact with Cleat or I, whether it's a story, fan mail, anything you want, you can go to entertheabysspod@gmail.com or the new Text Us feature through Buzzsprout. Whatever you prefer, send us your stuff.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.